know that Richard's had some experience with this because I made him listen to this before this interview so we could get some great feedback from him.
My experience has been that we were talking about it before the show. I use the emotional stabilizer in the evening after a day of work. So by the end of the day, I'm a little wrung out from holding a space, is what I'll call it. And what I've observed by using the emotional stabilizer every evening, which I come in and I'm ready to shut down the computer, and that's the last thing I do is listen to the emotional stabilizer while I'm doing that. And I notice that I feel smoother. I might be sleeping a little better, and I've never had a great relationship with sleep. But I might be sleeping a little better, and my head is less filled with boxes of marbles rolling around when I do sit down and relax into sleep. So I've really enjoyed it. It's very, it's so subtle in the sense of, I don't mean in its effect, but in terms of you're just listening to sounds. I'm not demeaning it in any way. I'm just saying it's not like there's a special, like there it is. It's just really nice, soothing to the soul, literally, and calming to the nervous system. I'm suspecting if I were to measure it or monitor it, it would, if I were to use something like a heart rate variability device, which I'm a fan of, but I would suspect it would put me into good HRV space. Matter of fact, I'll be doing that this evening, now that I've said that out loud.
Good
I'll
idea.
be monitoring that just to see, because that's how it feels. It feels like that smoothing effect of HRV when your heart rate variability gets smooth.
Explain HRV.
I just know it by using it. It's based on heart math research, who I've been a fan of for decades. And they used to have little devices that you'd put your finger on, and it would make a tone. And when you would be anxious or tense, and you were not changing the pressure. It was reading galvanic skin response, an electrical charge going across your skin. And the sound would go up, the sound would go down, and eventually you would learn to control the sound or make the sound change by just changing your mind. And that's what HRV would do. Now they have it built. For example, oddly enough, my Google Watch has HRV built into it. Because sometimes it gives me a report of like, oh, your HRV was really good last night while you were sleeping. That's mostly what I'm using it for, is to monitor my sleep. And that's what I find with I'll be consciously using emotional stabilizer, looking at my HRV first, then using it, and then looking at my HRV again, because by the way it feels from years of doing HRV work, I would say it's definitely having a benefit. The emotional stabilizer is having a beneficial effect on my HRV, meaning calming and soothing into a more quiet state.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that. Different people have different responses, and you're right, it is subtle. We're talking about energy, and it's not all of a sudden. It's cumulative, right? You don't, like in the first, it's a 12-minute piece. In the first 5 minutes, you probably don't feel much of anything, but by the end of the 12 minutes, cumulatively, it kind of clicks, and everything goes back to neutral. It's a way of getting into your heart space too. Heart space where your mind is quiet and your mind is subservient to your heart and the wishes of your heart and the experiences of your heart. That's where you want to be for any kind of healing really to take place. And it's hard to get there. It's hard to stop the mind. And I did badly. I had a situation this past week where I myself did really badly, and I had to go home and kind of say, "What the heck happened? That wasn't me." I was emotional in a way that I never am, and I eventually figured it out, and it was an inner child sort of a thing. But trying to get to a calm place when you're not calm is difficult. And everyone should have their toolbox of ways to do that, right? And hopefully, people are starting to figure that out. Well, this is just one of those tools for the emotional toolbox, because you really can just kind of put it on in the background. It's even more powerful if you're just listening to it and humming along. But you can, like you said, put it on in the background while you're closing down the computer, and still get this really sort of emotional kind of I don't know, is numbing the right word? And maybe that's a little bit too powerful. But
I think that's a little too. Because I don't think it's really numbing. Excuse me. To me, numbing indicates that we're either covering something up or trying to hide something. Yeah. And this doesn't seem to do that. This seems to truly get me into that HRV or heart, as you're saying, heart space. Like I think about, the audience has heard a lot about this. I was a chef for 20 years, and it's a high-stress job. But in those days, it might take a bottle of Chardonnay and an hour in a hot tub, right, to even blow off some of the chi of the day.
Sure.
Whereas I could have been, if I'd had something like this, I would have been able to, because that was even back, being a chef was one of the things that propelled me into looking into HRV, because I saw other people around me, fellow chefs, who were stress bags by the end of the day, and usually it's drugs or alcohol, because that's a primary, the alcohols are all around you, and it's easy access.
Yeah.
And you get that false sense of, I'm numbing things. That's actually numbing. Alcohol to me is actually numbing, even though I can still enjoy a good glass of Chardonnay. Mm-hmm. But it can be numbing, whereas this is not numbing. This is actually helping our own system come back into homeostasis of calm ease. Yes. And that's how it feels to me. And that's what I love about it. It's that feeling without, I still like a good glass of Chardonnay, but
who doesn't?
This is really soothing and calming. And I think about, I grew up in the era of Vietnam and had a bunch of buddies who went to war. And then afterwards, we were all in college together. And I think about them and how incredibly they were the poster child for post-traumatic stress disorder. Either the classic, sound in a park, where something would set somebody off and they wouldn't know why, and it was a combination of children in a park playing and a squeaky sound, and then suddenly there was backfire and some guy suddenly up in a tree yelling at people. And to have something like this where they could listen to this and actually soothe their systems and not numb, but actually soothe and bring them back into being heart-centered, because ultimately once you got to know them, they were stunningly heart-centered people. As a result of what they had gone through and what they had seen, when they did oftentimes had to get fairly well hammered, meaning drunk, to be able to allow that part out, because they were it was so tightly constricted from the trauma that they had gone through. So the idea of having something like this where they could all sit in a group, and even if you just played it in the background while people were chatting, I suspect it would have benefit. Is that true?
Well, I used it, I haven't really used it in the background yet, but you're saying it works for you. Usually I'm paying pretty close attention to it. I did do a guided meditation with it.
Yes.
When I was playing it in the background and just kind of talking people up and down and in and out and that sort of thing. But it works either way. Whether if you're more focused on it, it's going to be more powerful. But it works if it is in the background. Yeah, it does.
I think it'd be fun to work with a group. I don't have as many veterans around me now for no apparent reason other than we're just old. But it'd be certainly interesting to have a group of veterans around. I used to see veterans, a lot of particularly the Vietnam era veterans, at the Emerald Cup, which is in the old days an event, a cannabis event in Northern California. And they were just fierce in their caring for themselves and caring for their brothers and sisters about their use of cannabis to handle their own destabilized states versus drugs. They weren't interested in more drugs. They were interested in using cannabis to manage their post-traumatic stress.
Right.
And they would go, doctors would come in and do panels and talk about the drugs and the things, and they were just so irascible in their no, I'm fine. I'm managing my stress using cannabis. It's not hurting me. I'm not hurting anybody. It's keeping me managed. But the idea of if they would have this as a possibility instead,
it's a lot
not
cheaper.
that I'm anti-cannabis, just a lot cheaper. And you can do it in 15 minutes. You could probably sit down and I could see taking a group of people into my car and saying, okay, we're all going to sit here for 13 minutes and listen to this and hum. They'd think I was whacked, but they know that, like, okay, he knows stuff. We should try this.
Yeah. Well, which is why I'm thinking that group of people who have been traumatized by war could really benefit by this. And if there's anyone in this listening audience who can help connect me with someone who could help, get this information out to them, I would be very grateful. That would be awesome. We could get this to so many people who could benefit from it.
Yeah.